Any last words? Redfern almost whispered. The wizard convinced our party was about to be obliterated. Looking frantically around, I quickly noted some sort of magical force field keeping us in place, so we didn't even have a way to run for cover. Yes, it definitely looked like our luck had finally run out. This is absurd. Cartha suddenly cried out for all to hear, taking a bold stand. If this is how you treat your loyal heroes, then all of you should be ashamed. While many of the truistics here immediately stood to their feet in protest and shock, a few actually seemed to agree with Cartha, surprising me. Moments later, a black disk of crackling energy appeared just above our heads, 30 feet in diameter and capable of descending on all of us, the sight of the disk quite ominous. That is a disintegration spell meant for all of us, Redfern gasped, recognizing the magic. Behold, the means of our end. Wait, one moment. A powerful voice called out from almost behind us. Turning, we quickly recognized Voxar standing a good 100 feet away, the truistic we encountered back in the Cyan Desert, seizing everyone's attention. 1,000 pardons, Enlightened One, the wizard called out, bowing to the ancient woman seated in the floating chair ahead of us. Please, a word with these fools before you destroy them. You have 30 heartbeats, the Enlightened One huffed, apparently very eager to destroy all of us. Voxar bowed again, then cast Dimension Door, reappearing just 10 feet away, floating over the darkness between us and the wooden floor of the chamber beyond. You're going to die anyway, but please, what news of my father Lodis? Voxar politely asked. Did you find him? Is he alive? Well, this was awkward. In the end, we couldn't save Lodis, his spirit now living on within Queen Delpana. He is still alive, sort of. Redfern responded, unable to meet the gaze of Voxar. We found him in the marshland west of EAA and he helped defeat a massive army of swamp creatures, saving the entire city. What do you mean, sort of? Voxar sneered, fearing the worst. He sacrificed himself to save his beloved Queen Delpana, Cartha responded, bowing her head. It was his decision, we're sorry. Enraged with our party's response, Voxar's final words to us were as cold as ice. Disintegrate them. Voxar turned to the Enlightened One and nodded. In turn, the ancient woman high atop her floating chair allowed her spell to descend upon my party. Still crackling with disintegration energy, the black disk soon engulfed all of us. The pain was immediate and intense, not unlike the magical curse that had been encircling the one plant we accidentally dispelled just an hour ago. Our anger toward the inner circle now raging, the pain swallowed all of us as our deaths rapidly approached. The spell ended and all of us collapsed, barely conscious yet, somehow, still alive. My heroes looked at one another, then found the strength to first rise to our knees before gaining our feet completely, standing tall against impossible odds. As we regained our feet, a collective gasp was heard from all the truistics surrounding us. They had just witnessed something seemingly impossible and they didn't know what to think. Nearly destroyed by the powerful spell, I threw caution to the wind and directly taunted the inner circle, gaining smiles from both Eswin and Ariana. Hey, Circle, is that all you got? We should all be dead, Cartha uttered, barely able to stand. Some other powerful magic is in play here. What is this? The Enlightened One roared from her floating chair, shocked and enraged. Who dares protect these hooligans from my final judgment? The Enlightened One scanned the audience below her, convinced that someone had betrayed the circle. Looking about, I spotted Redfern standing there, the whites of his eyes consumed in fire now as if he were suddenly possessed. I wasn't sure how or why, but it seemed Redfern had somehow saved our party from the mass disintegration spell. Almost insane with anger, the Enlightened One stood to her feet and summoned the most horrific lightning bolt we had ever seen, about to hurl the deadly electricity straight at us. Certainly unable to take another magical beating, I watched in stunned amazement as Redfern stepped to the front of the party, his eyes seemingly on fire and walking like a man possessed. The Enlightened One then hurled her bolt of lightning at all of us, its power more than enough to obliterate the party. Yet Redfern simply exposed his right palm and somehow the electricity ricocheted away from us, slamming into dozens of nearby tree branches and starting several small fires. Moments later, a whitish glow emanated from Redfern, something seemingly emerging out of him. The ghostly substance quickly coalesced around the young wizard, transforming into something we had seen before, the Angel of Death. Floating there now just a few feet away from Redfern, the ghostly visage of Sandaria appeared to be actively protecting the party, which explained how we were able to survive the disintegration spell moments before. The apparent spirit of Sandaria herself, she pointed directly at the Enlightened One and uttered a stern warning. "Stand down, you lying, two-faced, self-serving bitch. Who, or what, are you?" The Enlightened One demanded to know, the two beings now just 30 feet or so apart. "She was once one of us," a familiar voice called out. Turning to our right, I could clearly see the old wizard Vel standing there, the truistic who let us go back in Kathleen. The elderly magic user nodded in our direction, then turned back to the Enlightened One. "That is the spirit of Sandaria, former representative to the country of Pyrava. You were always a rebel and deserved your execution at the stake," the Enlightened One responded, "clearly no friend of Sandaria. You should be dead, like this miserable adventuring party. These heroes have more honor and resolve in their hearts than all of you fools combined." Sandaria snapped back, further stunning everyone with her audacity. "You should be thanking them instead of trying to destroy them." Not sure what was more surprising, seeing the spirit of Sandaria again or the possibility that she had become our ally. I definitely sensed that something had changed in Sandaria. Her need to see the world burn seemed to be gone and, given her clear defense of the party, she had become an ally. This party caused a second age of damnation. The Enlightened One almost screamed back at Sandaria. Then they neutralized our curse on the one plant, something that took us years to create. They are a bane upon our land and need to be destroyed. At once, virtually all the truistics standing around our party began to stomp their feet, the noise signifying their complete agreement with the Enlightened One. "It was I who released the Hellions after the Sislans burned me alive," Sandaria cried, accepting blame. "Through this party, I have witnessed great things, even miraculous things. These heroes have the potential to save this world, stop trying to destroy them." Several moments of silence passed, the Enlightened One and Sandaria on the verge of doing battle against one another. The ancient woman atop her floating chair looked about, then slowly sat down again, all eyes glued upon her. "Very well. Is there anyone here willing to speak on behalf of these heroes?" "I for one owe my life to the leader, Lomtora," a voice called out, one I hadn't heard in a while. Turning around, I spotted Representative Margaret standing amongst her fellow truistics, the woman Ariana and I had saved from Darius and Rachel back in Tobin. I suspected that Margaret was risking her very life in speaking on behalf of our party, and I nodded to her with respect and continued admiration. "It is also true that they saved the entire dwarven city of Blue within the Cyan Desert," Voxar surprisingly added. "I witnessed it all myself. This party isn't all bad. These heroes have always meant well," the old wizard Vel then added, even he apparently willing to support our party. "Yes, they've made mistakes, but I believe Sandaria is correct, they have potential. Shouldn't we put that potential to our advantage?" "I would expect such nonsense from you, Vel," the Enlightened One responded, unimpressed. "But Voxar, and you, Margaret, both of you have always been voices of reason. Let us consider." The whole of the truistic audience gasped again, shocked by the Enlightened One's suggestion. "Remember the revelation I had, which helped me recognize the undead trap that would have destroyed all of you back at the Wilex River?" Cartha whispered in my ear. "A considering is similar, which allows the circle to peer into the future regarding a certain issue or question to see the best course of action. The ritual is incredibly painful, we should be honored that they would do this for us." The several dozen truistics here looked at one another, sat down and took each other's hands, closing their eyes and beginning to concentrate. The Enlightened One closed her eyes as well, raising her hand to her face in preparation for perhaps the most powerful magic known to the circle. "Now, my fellow truistics," the Enlightened One began, already deep in thought. "Relax, concentrate, let the magic of all our combined lives energy center here, focused and unerring. Let us consider. Should this adventuring party be spared in service to the inner circle and our combined greater good?" Moments passed, the truistics in deep concentration now and the spell quickly causing them excruciating pain. Suddenly, a massive whirlpool of fire formed in the air near the ceiling of the great wooden dome, slowly rotating like a spiral galaxy. The cold fire magical in nature and hence not burning anything around it. I watched in stunned fascination as a dark void slowly formed within the center of the vortex. Several more seconds passed. Vague images then began to appear within the dark void, similar to the crystal ball we encountered back within the living chamber of Lodi's west of EAA, visual depictions that, very soon, resembled moments in time involving our adventuring party. As if watching an old movie, dozens of images quickly flashed by within the dark void, snapshots of various moments, encounters, dialogues and resolutions our heroes had had since the very beginning of our adventures back in Tobin. While hindsight always helped to better appreciate all the successes and failures along the way, all in all I was pleased with the progress our party had made so far, and I felt very proud of everything our party had accomplished. The sequence of images suddenly stopped, fixed totally on our party right here, right now, as if the rotating magic above was now a large mirror. Moments later, the images began again, but this time I didn't recognize anything. Our party seemed challenged by all sorts of monsters, villains, and tricky situations, potential glimpses into the future that, truth be told, we had no business observing. As the strange, magical movie continued, one thing was for certain: our adventures would only get harder and more consequential from here. The futuristic images finally stopped again, returning to a depiction of the here and now. Again, the dark void above appeared as a mirror, focused on our adventuring party. Continuing to watch above, the images within the dark void then depicted our party retreating into a tight circle, and, for a moment, we spotted someone new within the party, a woman with long brown hair we had never seen before. Then, suddenly, violently, and completely, our party released a burst of magic so incredibly powerful that all the truistics within the Dome of Decisions were instantly defeated, their own powers permanently stripped from them and their bodies left ancient and frail. Yikes, and yikes again. There was no doubt about what we had just witnessed. According to the prophetic magic of the circle itself, it appeared our party was destined to someday face defeat and all but destroy the circle. Naturally, this wasn't going to go well for our adventuring party. The magic swirling above our heads faded away and the Dome of Decisions drew silent, the truistics here stunned by the fatal prophecy. A few of the elderly truistics then began to condemn our party, the outrage and slander quickly reaching a crescendo. Like it or not, we had just become the circle's most feared enemy. Truistics. The enlightened one cried out, standing again to her feet and pointing a bony finger at our party. You have all witnessed yourself, if left alive, this party will destroy us all. For such a threat, there can only be one response: death. Annihilate these traitors at once. The enlightened one then began a spell, something we knew we couldn't survive twice. Indeed, all about us, the many truistic men and women here were similarly beginning their own spells. We were about to be blasted into oblivion. Out of the corner of my eye I noticed that the old wizard Vel had not begun any sort of offensive spell. Apparently, he still believed in us. Similarly, neither representatives Margaret nor even Voxar were doing anything offensive either. At least we would die with a few of the truistics on our side. My heroes instinctively retreating into a tight group, I watched in amazement as the spirit of Sandaria encircled our party, moving so quickly as to fully envelop all of us with her misty whiteness. I could see through her ghostly energy, but it seemed she was trying to protect us. Dozens of highly offensive spells were then unleashed upon our party, a combination of fire, ice, electricity, poisoned gas, and even disintegration beams. As they struck the milky white aura surrounding our party, however, they were immediately negated. None of it actually harmed any of us within the protective aura of Sandaria. The sound and energy of all the spells slamming against Sandaria's anti-magic sphere quickly became both blinding and deafening. We couldn't take any more of this, the experience even worse than the breaking of the onyx seal. The teleportation lasted just a wild moment or two, and suddenly our party found itself in some sort of outdoor setting, a dense fog encircling all of us. While nearly killed at the hands of the inner circle just moments ago, we dropped to the ground in fatigue and dizziness. Still critically wounded, we seemed to have somehow escaped the magical assault of the circle and now found ourselves, well, somewhere else. At least it was no longer the Dome of Decisions. My best guess, gut feeling, was that we were far from Sparklewood, the island home of the inner circle, and that Sandaria had teleported us somewhere relatively safe. Speaking of Sandaria, she appeared to be gone. There was no trace of the Angel of Death. Of course, that reminded me of Redfern, and I stepped to his side, the magic user shaking off his own unconsciousness. Apart from his wounds, Redfern seemed himself again. Thanks Cicely, you survived, too. I exclaimed, surprised that Redfern was still with our party. It appears so, Redfern responded in a daze. I must have blacked out. The enlightened one, she tried to disintegrate us, that's all I remember. Despite his own grievous wounds, Sainair stepped to Redfern and began to treat him, the Sislan likely recognizing that without Redfern, and the spirit of Sandaria carried within, all of us would now be dead. Ariana joined the two while Kartha and Eswin stepped alongside me, each with their own concerns to share. He still does not realize the spirit of Sandaria is within him, Kartha whispered in my ear, the mutant barely conscious herself. She seems our ally now, we should all be dead. At least we've escaped the circle. But for how long? Eswin asked, watching Redfern as well. What's to stop the circle from teleporting us back to them? They're not all powerful, Cartha responded, just as concerned. They're probably scrying for us right now, but it will take them a little time to find us. We need a way to somehow hide ourselves from them. Any idea where we are? Eswin asked, looking about. Unfortunately, the fog here was quite thick, we could barely see 20 feet away. While I could make out a few trees and trampled grass at our feet, that was about it. What's that? Ariana suddenly asked, looking to our right. Drawing her weapon, the young woman cautiously took 5 or 6 steps forward, her elven sight keener in the heavy fog than most. As my heroes instinctively drew together, I watched as Ariana approached a humanoid figure in the mist. Moments later, she actually stabbed into the air, the elf quite surprised. Ariana then relaxed her stance and motioned for us to follow. As we reached Ariana, I found some sort of scarecrow next to her, a simple dummy stuffed with straw and not a threat. That's a combat dummy, Eswin responded, recognizing its true purpose. We probably stand in some sort of training field. Moments later, I suddenly felt a long blade at my throat, warning me to not move. Looking about, each of my heroes felt similar blades at their own throats. It appeared our party had been surrounded. In the misty darkness, it was hard to tell what manner of creatures had surprised us. They were humanoid, possibly just normal people, but I couldn't be sure. You are hopelessly surrounded, an old, hoarse, quite accented voice almost whispered from beyond. Drop your weapons, or we will cut you down here and now. Given how badly hurt all of us were, along with the fact that we knew nothing of our sudden captors, I wisely agreed to stand down, dropping my weapon and asking the party to do likewise. Given the circumstances, that was definitely the better choice. We mean you no harm, Cartha began, the first to speak. Can you tell us where we are? Several anxious moments passed, Cartha's question unanswered. The same old, hoarse voice then whispered again from the dark mists. Who are you, and why are you here? That's a long story, Cartha responded, almost pleading with her voice. But we will tell you anything you want to know, please, stand down. We're better friends than enemies, I suggested, trying to show some strength even in our position of weakness. That remains to be seen, the voice responded, still unseen. We have no friends, only enemies. A lone, hooded figure then stepped into view, the humanoid just as curious about us as we were with him. In rather dramatic fashion, the person waited a few moments, then slowly pulled down his hood, revealing dark skin and white hair. He was a dark elf. I am Drill Sergeant Fkels and you are my prisoners. One false move and my platoon will cut you down, here in the mud. You have our word, we will behave, I returned, trying to buy a little trust. Your word means nothing to us, the dark elf responded, surprisingly irritated. Now, I will ask the questions and you will promptly answer. The drow elf stepped closer, eyeing each of us up one at a time. You must be spies. Be quick and tell me, who sent you and why are you here? I don't think you will believe us, Eswin stoically replied. I for one don't know why I am here either. The dark elf sneered, assuming that Eswin was flat out lying. The truth is, we just escaped with our lives, I added, being genuinely honest. We were about to be slaughtered and quickly teleported away. We really don't know where we are or why we're here. That's the best you can do? Sergeant Fkels responded, not buying my story in the slightest. You're either very stupid or very unlucky and stupid. This is Grimtyr, a dark elf stronghold, and we typically execute newcomers to our island, no questions asked. These folks seemed about as friendly as the ultimates we had just left back in Chegaria. Even dark elves value coin, I am sure, Cartha responded, knowing exactly what the drow value most. No need for hostilities, set us free, and we can reward you quite handsomely. The dark elf soldier pondered Cartha's offer, then called out to his fellow elven conscripts, several of them quickly appearing alongside him. Tie them up, lads, good and tight. Well, let Lord de Anzith decide what to do with them. At least a dozen dark elves then stepped toward us, retrieving strong ropes to ensure that we couldn't defend ourselves. A sudden, horrific cry shattered the silence, perhaps 100 yards away to our left. The dark elves instinctively reacted, looking about as a second voice cried out, and then a third. It appeared our position was under attack. Another dark elf then appeared from out of the fog, his face barely controlling the sheer terror he was feeling inside. It's the old gods. We're under attack. This sounds bad, Ariana commented, looking around but addressing Sergeant Fkuls. You're under attack, what can we do to help? Fall back. Sergeant Fkuls yelled at the top of his lungs. The gate will be closing. The dark elves surrounding our party nodded and quickly they were gone, leaving us alone with Fkuls. The soldier looked at me and uttered a quick response. You're on your own. And with that, Sergeant Fkuls turned and dashed away, leaving us alone to fend for ourselves. What to do? Ariana, what's our play? I asked, the elf by far the best tracker within the party. We're defenseless if we stay here, Ariana returned, already dashing in the same direction as Sergeant Fkuls. Follow me. Rushing through the mists, I sensed that whatever was attacking, they were very near, very large and quite monstrous. Several more dark elves screamed in terror as we fled and the ground actually shook with each step now of these hidden assailants. As I had hoped, Ariana managed to lead us away from the imminent danger, our party soon passing through the worst of the fog and reaching the main gate of a smaller city fortress beyond. All about were dozens of frantic dark elves, racing toward the open city gate and trying to flee what appeared to be gargantuan, animated trees with glowing red eyes and an almost insane demeanor. Before we could pass through the gate, however, it suddenly closed, barring our way forward. We weren't the only ones, several dozen dark elves had also been locked out, screaming in their desperation to be let back in. It appeared we would have to face all these monsters now ourselves. Blocked from seeking refuge within the small city beyond, our party turned back toward the approaching tree monsters, some of the dark elves around us drawing their weapons to make a valiant last stand here as well. Indeed, several of the elves slowly stepped toward us, likely recognizing that they had a better chance standing alongside a strong adventuring party. What are these things? Ariana asked of the closest dark elves. They're the old gods of the forest, here to kill us all. Came a frantic response. They suck the life out of anyone they capture, so look out. Indeed, as several of the monstrosities approached, a hapless dark elf was grabbed by one, the creature lifting it into the air. As the doomed drow struggled and then screamed, I saw what appeared to be glowing energy pulled from him and drawn into the vegetative monster. Moments later, I watched in horror as the body of the elf suddenly withered as if he were aging decades before our eyes. The old god then dropped the husk of the deceased dark elf, the creature apparently sated. Dark elves live for centuries, Ariana whispered, horrified. The monster just drained him of all his longevity, it's worse than a white's energy drain. Surveying the battlefield here, we couldn't get past the closed gate into the city and we certainly didn't want to return to the fog-laden valley north of us, so we needed to make a valiant stand here. Instinctively, my heroes formed a small circle with our backs to one another, a technique that had worked well in the past. Asking for quick advice, then, several of my heroes shouted their choice of tactics as the vegetative monstrosities approached. We should keep our distance and let the dark elves fight them. Sainairs initially offered. Let's ally ourselves with the drow and fight these monsters head-on. Ariana shouted, Kartha agreeing with her. We can do this ourselves. Eswin countered. These dark elves will only get in our way. Agreeing with Ariana to try and ally with the dark elves, I instructed her to make the attempt amidst all the chaos of the attacking monsters. The young warrior immediately belted out our party's offer in Elven, attempting to draw at least some of the dark elves to our side so we could battle these old gods together. At first the dark elves were dumbfounded by Ariana's request, but a few of them nodded in agreement and stood with my party, providing additional strength. Seeing this, another dozen took their place alongside their brethren. Ariana had done it. Similar to how the feline were able to divide and conquer the attacking Hellions back in Nace, the dark elves here leaped into combat with the old gods, separating several away from us and keeping their backs against our backs so none of the monsters could flank us or attack from behind. Allying ourselves with the dark elves was definitely the right move. 3 of the vegetative monstrosities then stepped toward us to attack, several more engaging with the dark elves just behind us. Appearing like treants but even larger and, well, apparently possessed in some way, the creatures seemed incredibly angry, as if our party was responsible for the demise of their entire species. Don't let them grab you. Ariana shouted again, warning our party as the old gods attacked. Standing about 30 feet tall and weighing over 2 tons each, the monsters attacked with 2 enormous fists. Each fist could easily kill a grown human being, but when both landed upon a victim, they were immediately seized, drained, and slain. Hence, we had our own hands full as we attacked the monsters with both sword and spell while desperately avoiding their lethal grasp. The battle lasted nearly an hour, our party engaged with 3 of the old gods but the desperate dark elves fighting another 4. The last of the cursed treants finally went down and my party breathed a huge sigh of relief. The drow by no means are friends, a few of them at least nodded in appreciation of allying with our party, which did make the battle much more survivable, for both sides. What are those things? Eswin asked as he put his weapon away and tended to his wounds. They fight with such ferocity. Creatures of the forest I believe, Kartha answered, unsure. But they are not natural. I think I know what they are, Sainair stated, shaking his head. And Sisla help us if I am right. All eyes turned toward the Sislan, the cleric sighing deeply before continuing. The large iron gate that had trapped us outside the small city here then swung open, nearly taking us by surprise. About to reveal what he believed the cursed treants actually were, Sainair instead closed his mouth and watched alongside all of us as the gates opened fully, the city beyond now accessible. Eswin nodded to me to follow, then escorted our party forward, my heroes being careful to not interfere with any of the dark elves rushing by as well. And that's a wrap of episode number 46, Fury of the Circle. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.